this is what's becoming evident to us, and this has a lot to do with this particular sabbatical teaching and the sabbatical reading. Since we're in the second, this is the eve now of the second Sabbath in our year as Ethiopian Hebrews, which if you download or have a copy of the weekly sabbatical readings that you can find at lojsociety.org and download the PDF and print it out. It's only about, what, 13? You can say about 13 or so pages, front and back, that is. 13 pages. And here's what's interesting when we look at this right here. The second Sabbath, or the bait, the abiyat. Abiyat means the bait is like a paragraph. Bait is a paragraph. The abiyat are like paragraphs. The mi'rafat, or the mi'raf is a chapter, or mi'rafat are chapters. In the Hebrew, or the so-called Hebraics, it is called the parasha, or parashiot, or parashat. All right. So when we look at the second sabbatical portions, Enoch. What we wanted to do is to give ones and ones an overview, to go through an overview, because we said it's the personal responsibility of each of y'all, and as family, and especially the brethren. Brethren, please make note. Brethren, especially the brethren. Most of our teachings are going to be focused, directed to the black male and the brothers, you understand, and the men. You understand, because since the fall of so-called Adam, the fall of the black man, the fall of man in general, though even maleness is going through a fall. You understand? You can just look around and look over the last couple of thousand years, and you can see what we mean. And even today, there's examples of that. So, scriptures speak to us in a certain language, to the male, to the female, to collective. Much of what we notice the scriptures speaking is to that headship or responsibility of the male, and the black male especially, whether we look at it from a biblical or scriptural, Deuteronomy chapter 28 verses 15 to 68, or we look at it from How to Make a Slave, the Willie Lynch papers, or if we just look at it nowadays with the baby mama dramas and the deadbeat black baby fathers, and all this is part and parcel of the curse. So we have to focus in order to come out of this confusion and to return to the King of Kings in and through his Christ. You understand? We have to go through this birthing process. You understand? As well as to recognize our personal responsibility to Christ in his kingly character, to our God and Father in and through Jesus Christ, first and foremost. You understand? In other words, the curse all came upon us because of that disobedience to God, that disobedience to the Most High. You see, that's what a lot of these teachers don't want to really tell you. You understand? Really show you. So how did it happen? You understand? It just didn't happen the other day. Symptoms keeps happening, but the real causes, we have to go all the way to the beginning, and this is why we've been focusing so much on the beginning. And in the first part of the sabbatical teachings for the first Sabbath on Bereshit or B'Mejameria, we focus on a 6 to 7 part teaching of some of the basic homology and ancient so-called mythology that was connected from a Mosaic and a true biblical point of view, including the fact that Moses was learning all the wisdom of the Egypts. So we have to look at Egypt and understand the connection, and the key for us is the Ethiopic Genesis, the Orit Zelidet, Orit Zefitret, and them hard Bible of Covenant HAILE SELASSIE, properly interpreted. This is what we attempted to do within those series of videos concerning the Ethiopic Genesis. Now, in moving forward, we're in a very interesting period. The second sabbatical reading, Enoch, or Noach, or Noah's reading, and that's from the Orit Zemuse, or the Torah reading, Genesis chapter 6 verse 9 to Genesis chapter 11 verse 32. And there was something interesting that came to me while I was watching a particular, I think, a news show or one of these kind of shows out there, and I saw, a woman, some Asian woman, and I began to think, have you looked at some of the wall paintings, the archaeology from ancient Egypt? Have you noticed that usually you will see the black or reddish males, the rutu or the rutinu, the ritinu, you know what I'm saying, with these Asian light skin and Asiatic featured looking woman. You know what I'm saying? You see this in Egypt a lot, especially in the wall paintings, especially when they have been preserved in color. You'll see that a lot of the so-called goddesses, or from the period of time that we're given. Remember, Egypt has a couple of different periods. There were the so-called pyramid text time, there was the so-called pre-dynastic time, there was the old kingdom time, there was the middle kingdom time, there was a new kingdom time. This is as we are taught and told concerning the chronology, which is another area that we have to become a little more knowledgeable of individually and collectively. What we're just trying to say right here is there was different periods of time, but from a certain period of time in Egypt we see the red skin or the black males, the red males link with Adam, hint, the Adamic males with these Cofe Ole, or not white but more Asian or Asiatic looking woman. And many of the Asiatic looking women started to supersede or started to take the place of the original black woman and the reddish woman. When we look at one period, we see the reddish the reddish Egyptian and the reddish Egyptian male and the reddish Egyptian female. But then at a certain curious period, we see a lot of the reddish male with this whitish or light or Asiatic looking female. So we ask ourselves, what is that about? You know, no one has really sufficiently, especially among the so-called black Egyptologists, I want them to explain this, exactly what this is. But the Bible explains it to us, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity in this Timhar teaching, the Talmud of Negus and the Talmud of Kedamawi HAILE SELASSIE, to touch on this. And what is particularly interesting is that in the first part of this study, really at the last part of the Bereshit or B'Mejameria in the beginning, which was the first Sabbath, it ended in chapter 6 at verse 7. If you just consult the chart, verse 8 actually, Genesis 1 and 1 to Genesis 6 and 8. So when we look at Genesis chapter 6, it speaks about the flood. It speaks about the marriage of the Canaanites and the Sethites. And once again, we advise one to get the Oxford edition of the Schofield Study Bible, because if you have a copy of this in front of you, Schofield Study Bible, if you look at the footnote, it gives some very detailed footnotes from chapter 6 to chapter 11, or the beginning of chapter 12, which is the particular portion of the sabbatical reading for this particular Sabbath and the second Sabbath in this our Ethiopic year 7503. So the personal responsibility is to read this. If you're brethren, if you have a family and this family is the family of your house and you're the recognized head of your family, then it's your responsibility, you know what I'm saying, during the Sabbath time to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it keddus, to keep it holy. The commandment for the senbet, for the Sabbath, is remembrance. And memory and remembering is a spiritual act. This proves that the senbet, the Sabbath, is spiritual, because the command is asib. You understand? The command is to remember, to call it to mind. Call it to mind, to keep it set apart, or keddus or qidus, or holy, from every other time, from the other 6 days. You know what I'm saying? So it's the brothers, the brotherhood, brethren, y'all have to step up. We all have to step up, because we're being stepped on, and we will continue to be stepped on until we return to the Adonai, to our Cherui, to our chosen one, Yehoshua HaMoshiach, to get Tachina, Menhanatachin Jesus Christos. Yov said, return to him, to the glory of Kedamawi HAILE SELASSIE. So therefore, the teachings of His Imperial Majesty is very, very important. But what we're about to touch on right here is going to be the answer is going to be the answer to that particular question. Why do we see this at a particular period in time reflected in Egyptology or cosmology, in their art and fact and wall painting, where it seemed as though the red Egyptian, the Ritu or Riti or Ritinu, was not with his red counterpart, but he was with a different type of a woman. He was with a different type of woman. This right here is the fulfilling of this mystery in the scripture, where it speaks about how the sons of God came into the daughters of men. The sons of God, the children of Elohim, came into the daughters of men, the sons, speaking about those red men in ancient Egypt with those non-red women, the daughters of men.